Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to speak on the Victims' Orders Against Violent Offenders Bill, and I just really want to make a couple of really clear points. But central for me to this piece of legislation, picking up on what my colleague Katrina Shanks has just said, really is if you commit a heinous crime such as rape, should that forever affect your right to live in the same community as your victim? So for me, central to this conversation and debate that we're engaged in, that is the question to be asked. I'm not going to labour about what prompted this and the fact that there has been some flaws in the drafting of this bill, but what I really want to focus on is the whole issue about the victim and the victim needing to initiate a non-contact order. Because if we truly want to support victims in their rehabilitation, they shouldn't be initiating non-contact orders. So there is a current flaw in our criminal justice system because we have protection orders and restraining orders, but they're all about relationships that people have and victims have with their offenders. And so there is an anomaly in the legislation because we're talking in this instance about people, victims, who have no relationship with the offender other than being raped by them. And so it would seem to me that to create a piece of legislation that wants to protect victims, that then the victim must initiate by themselves is actually the biggest flaw in this whole design of the legislation as it's currently worded. So the victim, and I will quote, the victim has to seek that non-contact order, and really the individualism of that act and knowing some people who are involved in ACC through their sensitive claims unit, the whole process of women who have been through such a trauma trying to get on with their lives. I think if anybody had intimate experience of that process, would not be making victims have to apply for a non-contact order. What this piece of legislation would ensure is that the criminal justice system, in fact, puts at the heart of that any response to people in this situation where there is such a gap, the criminal justice system would look after the interest of victims in those particular circumstances. And so there is an opportunity, because this bill will be referred to a select committee, and Labor supports that, for other mechanisms to be looked at in terms of this gap in the system. We would advocate that the Parole Act and amendments to the Parole Act should take into consideration a systemic response. Amendments to the Harassment Act would take into consideration amendments to ensure that whatever protection orders, restraining orders, actually ensure victims in this particular circumstance are taken care of. And obviously for us, we want all of this done, and that's why the parole process provides the best mechanism for these things to be in place before the person is released from jail. Because essentially what this piece of legislation does is to allow a victim, after the person who has perpetuated a heinous crime such as rape on them is released, then they have an opportunity to apply for a non-contact order. So I'm hopeful that throughout this entire process we will keep central to this whole discussion about our response as a criminal justice system, as a community, as legislators, how we can best meet the needs of victims who don't qualify for the current mechanisms we have to ensure that they never have to engage with the perpetrator of the crime against them. And so I'm hopeful that there is a lot of goodwill in the House to make sure that this piece of legislation is going to work for victims to the fullest, and that we look at a community response to this, not an individualistic response, and make victims themselves be responsible for ensuring that they live in a safe, secure environment where their needs are central. Kia ora, Mr Speaker.
I call Jan Logie.
Mr Speaker,
I'm pleased to rise and offer the Green support for the